do you build projects? How do you contribute to projects? Large code bases, that becomes important. And most important is design. How do you design software? High level design as well as low level design. As you become more and more senior, this aspect becomes more and more important. But basically, this is the blueprint of the topics that you should know. I will also talk about where can you learn these topics from very shortly. Now, very similarly, on the front-end full stack side, DSA basic is still there. However, you need to get better at JavaScript. You need to understand how JavaScript engine works, how JavaScript works. Let's say, how are promises working internally? You need to get really good at that. Obviously, HTML, CSS, you need to be decent at. You need to understand how browsers work internally. You need to understand how CDNs work and when to leverage CDNs. In general, how does web architecture work? And then, I mean, you need to be able to do certain case studies, which are more or less like web-related design case studies. For example, let's say if I'm building a Google Doc, where multiple people could be editing the same Google Doc at the same time, then how do I design my APIs? How do I design my schema? So API design, schema design, still very important. How do I handle it on the UI? What is the right UX? That becomes important, right? Basically, what are the things that I'm lazily loading? What are the things that I'm preemptively loading? How am I caching things within the browser versus what am I fetching on real time from the API? All of that becomes important for a good front-end engineer. And then maybe some understanding of high-level design of backend systems, basic understanding of high-level design of backend systems, right? This is what, let's say, is required for a front-end engineer. These topics become more and more important as you become more and more senior. These are basics that are required for everybody who is a front-end engineer or a full-stack engineer. On DevOps side, you need to know DSA basic, followed by you should be really good at scripting in one scripting language, because you need to be writing a lot of scripts to get basic things done. So it could be Python, could be Bash, could be Golang, but one programming language. You need to be very, very good at certain DevOps tools. For example, if your company is going to be using Docker, then how do you write Docker configurations? You should understand how Docker works internally. If your company is using Kubernetes, then you should understand how Kubernetes work. I mean, Chef, Puppet, Ansible. There's some common DevOps tool that you should be familiar with. You should be very good on Linux internals. If there's an issue going on, you can like log into a system and you can like troubleshoot. You can figure out what are the processes running. You can search for patterns in a file. If one computer is not able to connect to another machine, then you can figure out where the packet is being dropped. You can figure out maybe what potential routers might have a problem. Hence, you can go and troubleshoot those routers. You should be good with those. In general, you should have a decent understanding of computer systems, which means I should understand how packets get transferred in computer network, right? Like, or let's say, how do multiple threads work together? How to analyze, let's say, a memory dump. Some of those are important skills for a DevOps engineer, right? This is basic for a DevOps. If you learn more about cloud, then you also become like a cloud DevOps engineer with slightly higher paying roles. Could be AWS, could be Azure, any. If you're expert in a cloud, then that again further elevates you. And again, if you learn more about system design, maybe a little bit more of problem solving, then you also become eligible for, let's say, SRE roles, which are slightly more higher paying. So net for a DevOps, DSA, scripting, DevOps tools, Linux internals, cloud, and HLD. If you do a little less, you still be a DevOps engineer. I mean, things till here are mandatory. After here are good to have. On AI ML, DSA important. Good understanding of mathematics, which is linear algebra, prob stats, probability statistics, basic classical machine learning, on supervised data, unsupervised data, deep learning, which is basically computer vision, NLP, natural language processing, and then these days LLM models are so famous. So maybe how do LLM models work internally? How do I tune my own LLM model? That followed by ML ops, so that you can actually configure the systems that you really want to use for running your large ML jobs, so as to say, right? So though that is important for becoming an AI ML engineer. These are the rough topics. I again understand that these topics alone might not make a lot of sense. How do I get started? What is the roadmap? So next, what I'm going to discuss is where do you start learning this from? But are all of you with me till now? Okay, then let's quickly get into where do I learn these from. I'm just going to filter out the topic and talk about where do I learn this from, where do I practice it from. Let's start with DSA. On DSA, firstly, there are two parts, right? I have to learn and I have to practice. Now for learning, I would suggest choose one YouTube channel which is complete. There are plenty. There is something called as Code Help. You could go and check that. There is Apna College. You could check that. There is Code with Harry. You could check that. These are again free of cost YouTube channels. They have full DSA concepts explained. That is where you learn. And then you have to practice. You have to apply what you learn. You could look at maybe Lead Code or Interview Bit for practicing. Again, free platforms. No payment required. Just go and practice whatever you learn. Solve some questions based on what you learned. On design, for LLD, there is a book called as Head First Design Pattern. You should check that out. On HLD, there's a book called Designing Data Intensive Applications. If you're not into books, if you're into websites, so there's a website here called design.guru. Just 1 second. Well, actually, I'll come back with the design. On HLD, there is a website called as Byte.Go. Refactoring.guru is the website for LLD. So you could check that out. Again, completely free of cost. Both of these websites that will help you again get started. On CS fundamentals, again, some of the channels that I mentioned above, the YouTube channels, they have decent content there. It's just that there is no practicing content. It's all learning content. There is no practicing content for both design and CS fundamentals, unfortunately. There is some practicing content. If you want to write SQL queries, then LeetCode has support for SQL queries and multi-threading, which you can go and check out for practice. I think, yeah, that's mostly all there is for practice. As for DevOps tool, there is a website called as Code Cloud. Unfortunately, it's a paid flat platform, but again, they have a bunch of exercises which you can go and practice on. For cloud, typically AWS, Azure, all of them have their own courses that they run. If you are looking to get started, maybe you could look at some of those. There are courses on Udemy, etc. as well. You could probably check out those. Those are again might cost you something, but they're not very expensive. They will help you get started with cloud. On ML and AI, there are firstly some good YouTube channel. For example, there is one channel which is considered in very high regard, which is 3 Blue 1 Brown. If I'm not wrong, that's the name. It's a YouTube channel which is considered to be really, really good. So you could use that to maybe get started with machine learning, basic machine learning, and concepts around that, and then maybe slowly start practicing on Kaggle. This is for practice. Those are your rough resources which you could use for practicing the concepts that you have. Quick check, does that also make sense? I mean, I understand this was a little rushed, but hopefully that helps you if you're getting started. You can go over the topics in the order that they are mentioned for the role that you're targeting. What I've also done is I have prepared a bunch of videos, depending on again who you are, going into details topic by topic. Those videos have just been put on the notice board. If you open the notice board, you'll find some of the video. Again, depending on who you are, you can open the corresponding video and watch it later. Don't need to watch it right now. If you click on the notice board, it will show you the most latest message, which has, again, like based on who you are, what is the right video. It's a 20-30 minute video. Talks topic by topic. Exactly what is your interview going to look like? What is your work going to look like? Hence, what are the topics you should learn? What are the subtopics you should learn? And then it just is a video that works that way. So after the session, you can take a look at that if you're interested. It will also show you the path. It is basically the path within Scalar. If you follow that, you can't go wrong. All right. Maybe on a closing note, I will share a couple of more things before I start taking questions. Q&A is pending right after this, but before the Q&A, maybe just a couple of pointers. I said in the beginning that you should not be focused on money, but you should be focusing on things that lead to money. And I still am I stand by that statement, right? You should focus on building capabilities that help you build money. And we've seen that journey so many times at Scalar. We have seen that journey happen so many times with Scalar. When people get fixated on building the right skills, automatically for them, we see the outcomes happen. In fact, if you guys ever go to the Scalar dashboard, the dashboard that you get after logging in, on the right-hand side, if you scroll down, you will find like a live news feed of people getting jobs. These are students at Scalar getting jobs.